Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between. Welcome back to Geeks Watch. Today, I'm going to talk about a little 2016 film. Man, that was a long time ago. Called Zootopia, an image of which you will see here. Doesn't feel like this was 10 years ago, but I guess it was. So, as always, there will be some spoilers. Probably, as usual, when I want to talk about something in depth, there might be a little bit more spoilers than I usually prefer. So, the basic premise of the story is Judy Hopps, this little bunny here, has a childhood dream of becoming a police officer in the big city of Zootopia. You know, everyone thinks it's a bad idea because she's a cute little fluffy bunny, and bunnies can't be cops. But, you know, she excels in the police academy. She gets assigned to the first precinct in Zootopia, and she's made into a meter maid. She kind of volunteers to help find some missing persons, missing animals, much to the annoyment of her police chief. She winds up partnering up with a fox named Nick Wiles, who very reluctantly gets involved with him, but they kind of, develop a buddy cop relationship. They find not only the missing animals she volunteered to find, but all the missing animals who've been happening recently. Turns out they've all gone savage, and the mayor of Zootopia was kind of secretly keeping them under lock and key, both to avoid causing hysteria, but also to protect his political career. The assistant mayor, who is a tiny little sheep named Mayor Bellwether, becomes the new mayor, and Judy is kind of thrust into prominence. She solved this weeks-long missing animals case, not just one, but all of them, all 14 of them. She's thrust into prominence, and during a press conference, someone notes that all the missing animals, all the animals who've gone savage, are predators. And she speculates without any proof that maybe, because of our predators, maybe they're reverting to their savage natures and maybe it's because they're all predators that they're going savage. This kind of alienates her new buddy, Nick Wiles, and it kind of unleashes some anti-predator prejudice all across the city. Judy resigns in embarrassment and shame that she's done this. Goes back to her parents' carrot farm. When she learns that a flower that her parents used to protect their crops, if you eat that flower, it basically drives you insane temporarily. And Judy figures out that someone is using this plant to target predators. And it turns out it's Mayor Bellwether, the little tiny fuzzy sheep. Judy and Nick catch her. She goes back to the city, kind of like apologizes to Nick. They get back together. They solve the crime. They solve the case. The predators that Bellwether was targeting have been cured. She is arrested. And Nick joins the police force as, their first fox. So that's the story in a nutshell. And I went over that as I said, I want to talk about some stuff about the film. One of the basic premises of the film is prejudice. And across the film, it's not just one person that has it or one group that has it. People are prejudiced against Judy because she's a bunny. Bunnies can't do things. People are prejudiced against Nick because he's a fox, and foxes are untrustworthy. People are seen, only as the animals they are. Foxes, the mayor is a lion. His assistant is a sheep. All the cops, except Judy and eventually Nick, they're all large, powerful animals. There's wolves, lions and tigers and bears. and wolves, but also like rhinoceroses and elephants and water buffalo, large, powerful animals are, you know, and hippopotamuses. Those are the only ones who go out to be cops. The small, you know, supposedly small, meek animals do not become cops because they can't, quote unquote. Um, I'll get to another one. I'll get to, but that's something I want to talk about, something different. But just little things too. You know, when Judy makes that, you know, completely unscripted analysis of it, you know, predators going savage because they're reverting to their natures, and Nick kind of confronts her and gets angry, and she reaches for, like, you know, her parents gave her like fox repellent when going to the big city because they're, you know, paranoid little bunnies. But when she, you know, when Nick starts getting angry and yelling at her during that confrontation, she like reflexively reaches for the fox repellent. Even Judy is prejudiced against predators. You know, the prejudiced people have pointed at her. You know, she's as guilty of it as anyone. It's not, you know, she's not perfect. And it has done so, really done so well. There's, you know, there's, you know, they show how we as a society and individuals put people in boxes and don't let them get out of them. We fight to keep those people in the boxes that we've created for them instead of allowing them to be who they want to be and who they try to be. And in, you know, and in this film, almost everyone does it to some extent. Judy, Assistant Mayor Bellwether, the police chief Bogo, who is a water buffalo, Judy's parents, even Judy herself, and Nick. You know, so many people behave that way in this film. And it's just such a really good portrayal of some of what's wrong with society. The film's not perfect. You know, there are some criticisms that I've heard levy against the film, in that instead of trying to change the system, it just tells people to behave better. That's the one real criticism I've heard against the film's message and portrayal of the police and the system. It's like, you know, instead of trying to create a new system, it's just, the old system was fine, let's just be better. Let's just behave better. And it is kind of a feel-good ending as far as that goes, but it's still, I was surprised this film was done as well as it was. You know, that being the overall message. Other things I want to talk about in the film is this film is full of little details. You know, this film was made as an homage to old Disney films. You know, the people who have made the film, they cited like the old Disney Robin Hood with the foxes, and, you know, Robin Hood was a fox, Maid Marian was a fox, Little John was a big bear. And anthropomorphic animals wearing clothing. Disney hasn't done this kind of film in a very long time. They've been focusing on princess films, which is not a bad thing. I love a lot of the films that they've done, in spite of realizing that they can be problematic too. But a lot of Disney's roots, Rescuers Down Under, Robin Hood, and The Great Mouse Detective, all these, DuckTales, and, you know, even the cartoons and TV shows too. You know, Disney made a lot of anthropomorphic animal films as part of their staple for a very long time, and then they just kind of phased it out. And so the people who wanted to make Zootopia, this was their homage to that, and it really shows that they loved it so much. There's some changes too, like in those other films, the animals are living in the human world, either in like in Robin Hood, they don't really change anything. All the animals are about the same size. You know, there's some size difference, but, you know, Little John and Robin Hood, you know, Little John the bear is, you know, a couple heads taller, but everyone is like human sized, so to speak. In Zootopia, they really made an effort to like try to keep the body proportions close to normal, You know, like they settled on one animal. I think it was the wildebeest, up on two legs as the generic human size, and then based every other animal off of that. Like one wildebeest is like 2 dozen mice or something like that. I don't know what the exact mathematics, but you know, and they tried to create a city where that worked, and tried to design a city where that would work. Um, but other parts about this film, it's not a musical, unlike a lot of Disney films. There's a song in it. I think it's called "Be Any," "Try Anything" by Shakira, or performed by Shakira. She didn't write it. But the rest of the film, there's no real music aside from like what would be in the background normally, like you know someone listening to music in their car, or Judy listening to stuff on her phone, or her you know in her small little apartment. But this is not your traditional Disney musical. Other little details too, that makes this different from Disney film. Judy's parents, and this I loved, told her not to follow her dreams. Specifically, I said, it's okay to have dreams, just don't follow them. You know, your mother and I, we settled. Oh yeah, we settled hard. You know, the great thing about complacency is that you don't have to try anything. If you don't try, you never fail. Her parents were just so anti-Disney. You know, just your dream. You know, you can't achieve your dreams. Don't even bother trying. Just settle, like we did. That is such a counter to almost every Disney film's message. And that's how Judy starts. You know, she determines to be a cop. Like she'll follow her dreams in spite of everyone telling her, especially her parents, telling her not to. And just that's so. And you know, when she gets assigned as when they call her for a phone chat, like a video chat on her phone, and they see she's wearing the meter maid vest, and like so thrilled that she's not being a real cop. I love Judy's parents just for the they're so hysterical, and it's so counter to what Disney always does. You know, having parents who believe in you. It's like, nope, Judy's parents didn't believe in her at all. They actually tried to push her down. But there's so many little details in this film too that, getting to like the making of the film, when they pitched the film to Disney, they actually pitched 6 different film ideas. They were all like the animals wearing clothes things, but they pitched half a dozen different ideas. One was a pug in space. Um, you know, there were a bunch of other ones. That's the one I remember off the top of my head. When they eventually settled on, this wasn't initially called Zootopia. It was like Savage Seas or something like that. It was supposed to be like a spy film with Nick as the main character, set in like the 1960s, like a James Bond version, you know, a James Bond anthropomorphic thing. But they kind of switched that up to make it be more modern. And the initial story elements that evolved from that was that the initial thing was that the predators living in the society had to wear shock collars to make the prey animals feel safe, because even though prey animals outnumber predators 10 to 1, prey animals tend to be large and powerful, larger and more powerful than the prey animals. So they voluntarily colored themselves. And then when they got agitated, you know, the collars would read their emotional state, their pulse, their heart rate, things like that, their blood pressure. When it got too high, they would get a zap. And that the initial film was about that, about, you know, this controlled society, this controlled and repressive society that isolated and controlled predators to make the prey animals feel safe. And that wasn't really working. They worked on that for like a year or even more, and they just kind of switched it up to make, you know, what if the point of view is Judy, and make Nick the supporting character, and that worked better. You know, they switched it up from that to being a buddy cop movie with Judy, you know, seeing the film through Judy's eyes, the story through Judy's eyes. And there's so many good portrayals in this emotional portrayals in this film too. You know, when Judy apologizes to Nick for screwing up. She doesn't, she apologizes, but she says, I don't expect you to forgive me. You please help me fix the things I broke, and then you go back to hating me the rest of your life. Just that type of honesty in the writing, so good. I'm bouncing back and forth on topics. There's just so much. I could devote a couple hours to this. There's just so much in the film. The artists, the design artists were, they went to Disney's Wild Animal Kingdom, where they have animals. They sketched them, to try and get the animals. They were, concentrate on getting the animals right. And then Bob Lasseter sent them to Africa. Like, they didn't choose to go. Lasseter, okay, you guys are going to Africa now. They're like, what? And they said, some of the stories they told in the making, trying to get the animals' designs right and stuff. And they said they were watching like a cheetah eat a gazelle like 200 feet from their Jeep. And it kind of looked up at them with blood all over its face and its fur. And they're like, this is kind of real. This isn't a Disney film anymore. But they did such a good job. They tried to incorporate so many animals' natural movements with the movements that they make in the film, like the way giraffes the way giraffes walk is kind of like a lumbering, like a stilted gait. And they just kind of put the giraffes on two legs and have them walk the same way. They tried to make the animals move in the film the way animals move in real life, just on two legs and clothes instead of on four legs naked. In designing the city, the main city of Zootopia and the central district is, kind of built around like a New York style city. But the outlying districts, you've got, the Rainforest District, you've got Tundra Town, you've got Sahara Central. And how would these work? When in the main city, they all kind of have to live and work together, but in their own separate boroughs, they live in the environments they would prefer. And they use for Tundra District and the Sahara District are right next to each other, and you would think that would be why would you put the really hot place next to the cold place? But when you have air conditioning, it sucks heat away and pushes the heat somewhere else. So they're using the AC from Tundra District to heat the Sahara District. Like, this is in the film. They didn't necessarily explain it, but Judy takes a train to Zootopia, and she kind of drives through the districts, and you see when you get to the barrier between Tundra Town and Sahara Central, you see these giant heaters pumping heat, and it's because it's pulling the heat from, it's using the heat from making the air conditioning to heat Sahara City. So they actually did so much to design this film to make it make sense. And animals of different sizes. The trains have 3 different doors for small, medium, and large animals. Some of the food places have little chutes where you can deliver something to like a giraffe that's tall. Just all these other things. And another little detail for the film that I liked is that the background is important. For an animated film, everything has to be created. Nothing is there by accident. It's all by design. So when, there's a scene with Judy, the background is never static, like in the city. If the camera's on Judy, and it would make sense for people to be walking in the background, there are other animals walking in the background. There's a scene where she's talking, and you can see these 2 little mice walking behind her, and they're having an animated comment. They're talking, making gestures, their mouths are moving. They had to do that. Someone had to design that and create that and throw that in there. You'll see someone on the street, if the camera's on Judy or Nick. In the background, you'll see people walking behind them down the street. It's like they created all these extras to have in the background. They're as with real cameras, they're slightly out of focus, based on how far they are from the camera and where the main camera's sitting. But the background isn't just a static, flat image. It's a living, breathing thing. And other things too, where they really, like the store names. There's a sign. How we have Foot Locker? Well, they had Hoof Locker. They have signs Den for rent instead of apartment for rent. this stuff is everywhere. You know, if you watch the film and if you watch the backgrounds, which I did do when I rewatched this film for this little thing, there's so much in the background that didn't need to be there that is, and it's stuff you almost don't see unless you pay attention to it. I mean, you can if you look for it like I did, because I'm a nerd. If you can tell, because I've been ranting for 20 minutes, I really do love this film, and there's so much to love about it. There's so much effort and detail and love put into this film. You know, I watched the extras, and they're really pushing the, you know, we love Disney line with the extras to the point where it becomes annoying, especially if you know that Disney is just a corporation, a greedy corporation out to make money. It's only nice because it makes them more money. They can be as ruthless as the next guy. But there are good people at Disney. People who work there because they love the art, they love creating good art. And the people who made this did it for the love of the art. Yeah, they were paywall and they made a good amount of money, but this is one of those things where everything like clicked. They had a good idea. They were willing to scrap that idea for a better idea. I really hope some of the one of the ideas, one of the pitch ideas was anthropomorphic Three Musketeers. I would love it if they would do that. I think they should take some of those pitches and make them work, because they had some good ideas. I think a James Bond spy version would be great too. I have not seen Zootopia 2, but they had so many good ideas in their pitches that I would love it if they would take some of those and run with them. But yeah, I could keep going on and on and on about all the great stuff in Zootopia, because there was so much there that, you know, the way they designed the clothing, you know, some animals are too short to wear pants. So they just, you know, because they have little, like gerbils and mice, they have little short legs. You can't design pants for them. The way they designed the, you know, the little specific areas to match the animals that would live in them, the way they made the animals behave, the way animals would had they evolved, you know, into anthropomorphic beings. You know, when Judy thinks and is concentrating, her nose twitches. You know, the animals that have, you know, if you ever have had pets like dogs or cats or anything like that, you know that their ears convey their emotional state. And they did that with this film. You know, their ears will rotate or perk up or, you know, go down depending on the emotional state. They did so much effort into this film. You know, computer graphics, Judy and Nick both have like over 2.5 million hairs that they had to animate and create software for and make work for. Something which, you know, because every animal, this is all about mammals. Every animal that's in the shot has fur that has to look realistic and work. There was so much going in the effort of making this film, and I love it. I've spoken previously how much I love animation, and when the people in it take care and are given the time to do something right, and it really, really shows in something like Zootopia. Another little detail, when Shakira was playing Gazelle, like the premier pop star Gazelle in the film, and she was shown her figure, like her character she was portraying, a very nice, slim, slender Gazelle, and Shakira was like, put some meat on her bones. And if you watch the film, you notice that Shakira has some pretty big hips, you might say. And that was all because Shakira asked them to. Shakira is known for having a hip area, which you have to say that because it's a family show. But like I said, there's so many little details, so many things I could talk about for this film, and it's a great film. It won Best Animated Feature of 2016, which is the year it came out. I'm not the only one who loves this film. You know, so many people have talked about this film and the great, you know, the great things they do about how they, you know, how the characters portray their emotions, and how they take how especially Judy takes accountability for her actions. You know, both the good and the bad, and especially the bad. I could just rant on and on and on, and I have to shut myself up, because if I don't, this is going to be like an hour and a half long for talking about a kid's cartoon. which, as I spoke about The Incredibles, it's not just a kid's cartoon. This is definitely geared for everybody. There's so much in there that kids wouldn't get. So I love the film Zootopia. You should too. As always, thanks for watching. As always, my stuff is crap. And until next time, good hunting.